To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, we'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Shadows of the Past. Isaac Swift stood at the edge of his cramped apartment balcony, watching the sun disappear behind the Cleveland skyline. The city sprawled below him like a concrete maze, each light representing lives he'd never touch, dreams he'd never share. At 34, Isaac felt older than his years, a consequence of 2 tours in Afghanistan and the weight of secrets that came with special operations. His phone buzzed against the metal railing. A text from his ex-wife, Melody Bishop. "Don't be late tomorrow. Danny's been asking about you all week." Isaac's jaw tightened. Danny, his 8-year-old son, was the only pure thing left in his world. After the divorce 2 years ago, Melody had made every visit a battlefield, turning their child into a weapon of emotional warfare. She'd remarried quickly, too quickly, to her brother Mike Turner, a local businessman who owned several auto repair shops across the city. The official story was that Melody had fallen out of love, that Isaac's PTSD and deployment absences had driven them apart. The truth was more complex, darker, and Isaac had chosen to keep it buried. For Danny's sake, he'd told himself. But lately, that restraint was wearing thin. Isaac's military record was exemplary but classified. Delta Force operations in hostile territories, extraction missions that never made the news, and a skill set that made him valuable to certain government contractors. After his discharge, he'd tried the civilian route, security consulting, private investigation work, but nothing stuck. The corporate world felt like playing house after years of life and death decisions. His phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus Chun, his former commanding officer and current contact for off-the-books assignments. "Swift here. Isaac, I've got something that might interest you. 3-week gig in Eastern Europe. Good money, and you know the drill. Ask no questions, leave no traces." Isaac stared at Danny's school photo, taped to his refrigerator. "I can't. Family obligations." "Family?" Marcus's voice carried surprise. "You mean the ex-wife who took half your savings, and the kid who barely knows you?" The words stung because they held truth. "It's complicated. Everything's complicated until you decide to simplify it. Think about it, Swift. The offer stands for 48 hours. The line went dead. Isaac poured himself 3 fingers of bourbon and settled into his leather chair, the only piece of furniture he'd fought to keep in the divorce. Tomorrow was Danny's birthday party, and he'd promised to be there despite knowing he'd be walking into hostile territory. He opened his laptop and scrolled through social media posts from Melody's family. Photos of Danny playing baseball, family dinners at expensive restaurants, vacation trips to Florida. A life Isaac wasn't part of, orchestrated by people who'd never hidden their disdain for him. Mike Turner appeared in most of the recent photos, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of easy smile that came from never having to make hard choices. He'd swooped in during Isaac's darkest period, when nightmares kept him awake and alcohol seemed like the only solution. Melody had painted him as her savior, the stable provider Isaac could never be. But Isaac had done his homework. Mike Turner's businesses were successful, perhaps too successful for someone who'd started with a single garage and limited capital. The money flow didn't add up, and Isaac's instincts, honed by years of intelligence gathering, told him there were layers beneath Mike's polished surface. The apartment fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic. Isaac finished his bourbon and made a decision that would change everything. He opened a secure encrypted folder on his laptop, one he'd hoped never to access again. Inside were files, photographs, and evidence he'd gathered during the darkest period of his marriage, insurance policies he'd never intended to use. Tomorrow would be more than a birthday party. It would be reconnaissance. Chapter 2, The Gathering Storm. The Turner family home sat in an affluent suburb, its manicured lawn and brick facade screaming middle-class success. Isaac parked his black Charger 2 blocks away and walked, using the time to catalog exit routes and security vulnerabilities, old habits that had kept him alive in hostile territories. Children's laughter echoed from the backyard as he approached the front door. Through the window, he could see balloons, streamers, and a crowd of relatives he'd hoped never to face again. Melody's family had always viewed him as an outsider, a rough-edged soldier who'd somehow tricked their precious daughter into marriage. The door opened before he could knock. Mike Turner stood there, wearing a polo shirt and khakis, his smile as fake as campaign promises. Isaac, glad you could make it, buddy. Mike's handshake was firm, territorial. Danny's been asking about you all morning. Isaac forced a smile. Wouldn't miss it. Come on back. The party's in full swing. The backyard was a showcase of suburban perfection. A bounce house dominated one corner, while a professional-grade grill smoked nearby. Kids ran around with painted faces while adults clustered in groups, drinks in hand. Isaac spotted Danny immediately. His son was taller than he remembered, his dark hair falling across eyes that mirrored Isaac's own. Daddy. Danny broke away from a group of friends and launched himself into Isaac's arms. The embrace was genuine, untainted by the politics surrounding them. For a moment, Isaac forgot about everything else. Did you see the bounce house? Uncle Mike rented it just for me. Uncle Mike. The words stung more than they should have. That's pretty cool, buddy. Happy birthday. Isaac handed over his gift, a remote-controlled helicopter he'd spent 3 days researching. Danny's eyes lit up as he tore through the wrapping paper. This is awesome. Can we fly it now? After cake, Melody's voice cut through the moment. She approached wearing a sundress that probably cost more than Isaac's monthly rent. Isaac, you look different. He'd lost weight since their last encounter, traded his civilian softness for the lean efficiency that had defined his military years. Clean living. Her gaze lingered on his face, searching for something. Well, make yourself comfortable. Food's on the table. Isaac moved through the crowd like a ghost, invisible to most, but cataloging everything. Melody's brother, Gerard Blair, held court near the grill, regaling listeners with stories about his latest business ventures. Melody's parents, Curtis and Dorothy Stewart, presided over the gift table like benevolent monarchs. Then he noticed the others, men who didn't quite fit the suburban family gathering. They stood apart, their movements too controlled, their attention too focused. Security? Isaac's instincts screamed warnings he couldn't yet decipher. Look who crawled out from under a rock. Gerard's voice carried across the yard. Still unemployed and worthless, Isaac? The conversation died. All eyes turned to Isaac, who felt the familiar weight of combat awareness settling over him. This was an ambush, carefully orchestrated. Still living in that shoebox apartment? Gerard continued, emboldened by the audience. At least you're consistent. Laughter rippled through Melody's family. Isaac remained silent, his expression neutral. In Afghanistan, he'd learned that the deadliest predators were often the quietest. Leave him alone, Gerard. Melody's defense felt hollow, perfunctory. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Our Danny deserves better than weekend visits with a washed-up soldier. Isaac felt Danny's small hand slip into his. His son was looking up at him with confusion and hurt, trying to understand why these adults were being cruel. Daddy, Danny whispered, tugging at Isaac's shirt. Uncle Mike has a gun in his car. He told Mommy something bad. Isaac's blood turned to ice. He knelt down, bringing himself to Danny's eye level. Around them, the adults continued their social warfare, unaware of the bomb that had just been dropped. What did he say, buddy? Danny's voice shook with the weight of adult secrets a child shouldn't carry. He said after the cake, you won't be coming home because... Danny's words trailed off as his attention was captured by something behind Isaac. Isaac turned to see Mike approaching with the birthday cake, 8 candles flickering in the afternoon breeze. The crowd gathered, singing happy birthday while Isaac's mind raced through tactical scenarios. His son's words echoed, you won't be coming home. As the cake was cut and distributed, Isaac's military training kicked into overdrive. He counted the exits, noted the positioning of Mike's friends, and calculated response times. Whatever was planned for after the cake, Isaac would be ready. But first, he needed to get Danny to safety. Chapter 3, The Hunter's Patience. Isaac excused himself to use the bathroom, but instead slipped into Mike's study. The room reeked of expensive cologne and desperation, leather-bound books that had never been opened, awards for community service that felt like props. Isaac's trained eye swept the space, cataloging details. A gun safe stood in the corner, its digital lock blinking red. On the desk, Mike's laptop sat open, displaying what looked like shipping manifests. Isaac memorized the company names before moving to a filing cabinet that yielded nothing but legitimate business documents. The sound of footsteps in the hallway sent Isaac back to the window, where he pretended to admire the view. Mike entered moments later, his facade finally cracking. Enjoying the party, Isaac? Danny seems happy. That's what matters. Mike closed the door behind him, and Isaac noted the subtle click of the lock. We need to talk. About what? About you moving on. Finding somewhere else to build your life. Isaac turned from the window, his expression neutral. This is Danny's home state. I'm not going anywhere. See, that's where you're wrong. Mike moved to his desk, his hand resting near a drawer that probably contained a weapon. Melody's found happiness. Real happiness. And you're like a ghost haunting her past. I'm Danny's father. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, you're just some guy who shows up twice a month and confuses the hell out of that kid. Isaac had heard enough. His military training had taught him to identify threats, and Mike Turner was broadcasting danger with every word. But Isaac was patient, a predator who understood the value of timing. You're right, Isaac said, his voice carefully modulated. Maybe it is time for me to move on. Mike's relief was palpable. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. After all, Danny deserves stability. Exactly. And Melody deserves to move forward without looking over her shoulder. Isaac nodded thoughtfully. I'll need some time to wrap things up here. Maybe a month. A month's fine. Generous, even. As Isaac reached for the door handle, Mike's voice stopped him. Isaac, this conversation, it stays between us, right? No need to upset Melody or Danny with the details. Isaac turned back, and for just a moment, Mike saw something in his eyes that made him step backward. Then Isaac smiled, the cold, predatory smile that had been the last thing many enemies had seen. Of course, our little secret. Isaac rejoined the party, his demeanor unchanged but his mind racing. He spent the remaining hour playing the role of the defeated ex-husband, accepting condescending advice from Melody's relatives while internally cataloging every detail that might prove useful later. Danny clung to him as the party wound down, sensing something his young mind couldn't articulate. Will I see you next weekend, Daddy? Count on it, buddy. As Isaac walked back to his car, he felt eyes tracking his movement. Mike's security detail was professional, but not invisible, not to someone with Isaac's background. He drove home via a circuitous route, confirming the tale and then losing it in the industrial district he knew like a chessboard. Back in his apartment, Isaac spread surveillance photos across his kitchen table, images he'd been collecting for months, insurance against a day like today. Mike Turner, Melody, Gerard Blair, and several other key players in what Isaac now understood was a carefully orchestrated campaign to remove him from Danny's life permanently. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Chun. Offer expires in 6 hours. Yes or no? Isaac stared at Danny's photo, then at the evidence spread before him. Marcus was offering escape, a chance to disappear into the shadow world where Isaac's skills were valued and his past was an asset rather than baggage. But running would mean abandoning Danny to people who saw him as property to be managed. And Isaac Swift had never abandoned a mission. He typed back, rain check. I've got some local business to finish first. The real war was just beginning. Chapter 4, The Web Unravels. Isaac spent the next 3 days becoming a ghost. He used skills learned in hostile territories to surveil Mike Turner's operations, mapping patterns and identifying weaknesses. What he discovered made Danny's birthday party warning take on sinister new dimensions. Mike's auto repair shops were fronts, sophisticated money laundering operations that processed cash for drug trafficking networks across the Midwest. The security detail at the party weren't bodyguards but enforcers, muscle for hire with connections to organized crime families in Detroit and Chicago. Melody wasn't just an innocent bystander. Financial records Isaac accessed through channels that didn't officially exist showed her actively involved in the business side, her nursing degree providing perfect cover for medical treatment of Turner's less legitimate associates. The plan to eliminate Isaac wasn't about Danny's custody. It was about protecting a criminal enterprise worth millions. Isaac's military background and investigative skills made him a threat they couldn't ignore or control. On Thursday night, Isaac sat in his car outside a warehouse on the city's east side, watching Mike conduct business with men who carried themselves like soldiers but wore their criminality like cologne. Through military-grade surveillance equipment, he recorded conversations that would send half of Cleveland's underground to federal prison. But Isaac wasn't interested in justice. He wanted vengeance. His phone rang. Melody's number. Isaac, we need to talk. About what? About us. About Danny. About moving forward. Her voice carried artificial warmth, the kind of forced emotion that preceded bad news. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow? There's a coffee shop on Euclid Avenue, near the university. Grounded. Isaac knew the place. Multiple exits, public enough to discourage violence, isolated enough for private conversation. What time? 2 o'clock. I'll be there. After she hung up, Isaac stared at his reflection in the car's window. Melody was being used, probably promised that Isaac would simply disappear without causing problems. She had no idea she was married to a predator who saw murder as just another business expense. The next morning, Isaac visited an old friend from his Delta Force unit, Russell Pearson, who now ran a specialized security firm that catered to clients who asked few questions and paid well for discretion. Isaac fucking Swift. Russell grinned as they shook hands in his downtown office. I heard you were playing house in suburbia. House got foreclosed. I need equipment. Russell's expression shifted to business mode. What kind of equipment? The kind that doesn't exist on paper. And I need a team. 3 men, professionals, willing to work outside normal parameters. How far outside? Isaac met his gaze directly. As far as necessary. Russell nodded slowly. Budget. Whatever it costs. I've got assets. Timeline. 72 hours. Done. But Isaac, whatever you're planning, make sure you can live with the consequences. The shadow world doesn't offer therapy sessions. Isaac left Russell's office with a duffel bag containing surveillance equipment, weapons, and communication devices that would make most intelligence agencies jealous. His phone showed 2 missed calls from Danny's school. Apparently, his son had been asking teachers about guns and whether daddies could get hurt. The coffee shop meeting with Melody was theater, a carefully scripted performance where she played the concerned ex-wife seeking closure. Isaac played his role perfectly, the broken soldier accepting defeat gracefully. I've been thinking about what Mike said, Isaac began, stirring sugar into coffee he wouldn't drink. Maybe he's right. Maybe Danny does need stability. Relief flooded Melody's face. I'm so glad you understand. This isn't about punishing you, Isaac. It's about what's best for everyone. I know, and I want what's best for Danny. So you'll consider relocating? Maybe find work in another state. Isaac nodded thoughtfully. Actually, I might have found something. Government contract work. Overseas. Overseas. Melody couldn't hide her excitement. For how long? Indefinite assignment. Could be years. And you'd be willing to do that? For Danny's sake. For Danny's sake. Isaac confirmed, watching her process the implications. A father who disappeared overseas could have accidents, encounters with foreign criminals, situations that left children orphaned, and stepmothers free to start fresh. When would you leave? Soon. This weekend, maybe. Melody reached across the table and touched his hand, a gesture that once would have meant something. I think you're making the right choice, Isaac. The brave choice. As they parted ways in the parking lot, Isaac wondered if she truly believed her own words or if some part of her understood the forces she'd aligned herself with. Either way, it no longer mattered. The countdown had begun. Chapter 5, The Predator's Gambit. Isaac's apartment had been transformed into a command center. Military maps covered the walls, marked with locations, timing notations, and tactical notes. Russell's team had delivered equipment that turned the space into a sophisticated surveillance hub capable of monitoring communications across the city. The 3 men Russell had recruited were specialists: Edmund Copeland, a former Navy SEAL with demolitions expertise, Martin Valdez, an ex-Army Ranger who specialized in electronic warfare, and Perry Howe, a Marine sniper whose civilian career had been cut short by an unfortunate incident involving a corrupt prosecutor. Gentlemen, Isaac addressed his team Friday evening. We're not just planning an operation. We're orchestrating a symphony of consequences. The target list was comprehensive. Mike Turner and his inner circle, the corrupt officials who enabled his operations, and the network of criminals who thought Cleveland was their private playground. But Isaac's plan went beyond simple elimination. He wanted them to understand they'd made the mistake of threatening his son. Phase 1 begins tonight. Isaac continued, pointing to photographs spread across his kitchen table. We're going to turn their own paranoia against them. Edmund studied the warehouse surveillance photos. These guys are professional. Military background, good equipment, established protocols. Which makes them predictable, Isaac replied. Martin, I need you to infiltrate their communications network. Every phone call, Every text message, every digital whisper. Already done, Martin grinned, indicating his laptop setup. These amateurs think encryption means using their girlfriend's birthday as a password. Harry, I need Overwatch on Turner's house and the primary warehouse. Any movement, any deviation from normal patterns. Copy that. What about collateral damage? Isaac's expression hardened. Civilians are off limits. This is about justice, not terrorism. The team spent the next 6 hours finalizing details, checking equipment, and rehearsing contingencies. At midnight, they moved out, shadows with purpose, predators with precision. Martin's electronic warfare began first. Fake communications flooded Turner's network, orders that contradicted each other, reports of rival gangs moving against them, intelligence suggesting law enforcement raids were imminent. By dawn Saturday, Turner's organization was eating itself alive with suspicion and fear. Isaac watched from a stolen van as Turner's security team scrambled between locations, chasing phantom threats that existed only in their paranoid imaginations. The beauty of psychological warfare was its efficiency. Enemies destroyed themselves while you remained invisible. His phone rang. Melody again. Isaac, something's happening. Mike's acting strange, talking about security threats. He wants Danny to stay at my parents' house this weekend. Perfect. Isaac had counted on Turner's paranoia protecting Danny from whatever came next. Probably just work stress, Isaac replied. These business types get wound up over nothing. Maybe. But Isaac, if something were to happen, if there were some kind of emergency, how would I reach you? What kind of emergency? I don't know. Mike's been talking about people who might want to hurt our family. People from his past. Isaac almost laughed. Turner was so deep in his own lies he couldn't distinguish between real threats and manufactured ones. I'll keep my phone on. But Melody? If things get scary, take Danny and go to your parents. Don't wait for permission. You think I should be worried? I think a mother's instincts are usually right. After ending the call, Isaac checked his watch. Phase 2 would begin in 6 hours. Just enough time for Turner's paranoia to reach critical mass. Edmund's voice crackled through the radio. Boss, we've got movement at the warehouse. Looks like they're evacuating the premises. Confirmed, Perry added from his sniper position. Vehicles leaving with boxes of what looks like documentation. They're burning files in the parking lot. Isaac smiled. Turner was destroying evidence of crimes that hadn't been committed yet, erasing connections that existed only in his frightened mind. The beautiful irony was that in trying to protect himself from imaginary threats, Turner was eliminating the very evidence that might have protected him from real ones. All units, maintain Overwatch but do not engage. Let them exhaust themselves. By evening, Turner's organization was in complete disarray. Security teams had abandoned their posts, financial operations had ground to a halt, and the network of corrupt officials who'd enabled the operation were distancing themselves from what they perceived as a sinking ship. Isaac's phone showed 17 missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize and 3 frantic voicemails from Melody. But he didn't respond. Ghosts didn't answer phones, and Isaac Swift was becoming something more dangerous than any ghost. He was becoming a nightmare with a plan. Chapter 6. The Storm Breaks. Sunday morning arrived with unseasonable thunder, as if nature itself sensed the violence building on Cleveland's horizon. Isaac sat in his command center, watching live feeds from cameras his team had positioned around Turner's remaining strongholds. The psychological warfare had worked perfectly. Turner's organization was bleeding personnel and resources while chasing phantoms. Martin looked up from his communications array. Boss, I'm intercepting chatter about a meeting tonight. Turner's calling an outside muscle from Detroit. How many? At least a dozen. Professional grade. These aren't street thugs. Isaac nodded. Turner was escalating, which meant the endgame was approaching faster than anticipated. Harry, what's the situation at Turner's house? Melody left with suitcases an hour ago. Looked like she was crying. No sign of the kid. Good. Danny was safe with his grandparents, away from what was coming. Isaac had one last preparation to make. He drove to Danny's school, knowing his son wouldn't be there, but needing to see the place where his boy spent his days. The playground was empty, swings moving in the storm wind like hanged men. Isaac sat in his car and recorded a video message on his phone. Words for Danny to hear someday, when he was old enough to understand why his father had made certain choices. Hey buddy, Isaac began, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through. If you're watching this, it means I had to go away for a while. Maybe forever. I want you to know that everything I did to protect you. You're the best thing I ever created, and I love you more than words can say. He paused, watching a school bus pull into the empty parking lot. A driver checking routes for Monday morning, oblivious to the war being planned around him. Your mom? She made some mistakes, got involved with bad people. But she loves you too, in her way. Don't hate her for the choices she made. People do stupid things when they're scared. Thunder rumbled overhead, and Isaac felt the first drops of rain against his windshield. Be strong, Danny. Be better than your old man. And remember, sometimes the good guys have to do bad things to protect the people they love. Isaac ended the recording and uploaded it to a secure server, programmed to deliver the message to Danny's email on his 18th birthday. Whatever happened tonight, his son would eventually understand. At sunset, Isaac's team gathered for final briefings. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. They would let Turner's reinforcements arrive, then systematically dismantle his operation while making it look like a gang war gone wrong. By morning, Turner's criminal empire would be ashes, and Isaac would be on a plane to somewhere warm and untraceable. Remember, Isaac addressed his team. Turner and his inner circle are priority targets. Everyone else is business. Edmund checked his demolitions kit one final time. What about the wife? Melody's not combatant. She's collateral damage from her own choices. And if she gets in the way? Isaac's expression went cold. Then she learns that actions have consequences. The team moved out as full darkness fell, spreading across the city like instruments of judgment. Isaac felt the familiar calm that preceded combat operations, the strange peace that came with absolute commitment to a course of action. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We know who you are. We know what you're planning. Walk away now, or everyone you love dies. Isaac showed the message to Martin, who traced it in seconds. Bounced through 6 proxies, but the origination point is Turner's warehouse. They're getting desperate. Boss. Perry's voice crackled through the radio. Detroit Muscle just arrived. 12 vehicles, professional formations. These guys know what they're doing. Isaac checked his watch. 9:47 p.m. In 13 minutes, Turner's nightmare would become reality. All units, final weapons check. This is not a drill, gentlemen. Tonight, we remind Cleveland why some people should never be threatened. As Isaac chambered a round in his rifle, he thought about Danny sleeping safely at his grandparents' house, dreaming innocent dreams while his father prepared to paint the city red. Tomorrow would bring questions, investigations, and consequences. But tonight belonged to vengeance. The storm was about to break, and Isaac Swift was its architect. Chapter 7, Blood and Thunder. The warehouse district erupted into chaos at precisely 10 p.m. Isaac's team struck simultaneously from 3 directions, turning Turner's reinforcements into confusion and friendly fire. Edmund's explosives eliminated the perimeter guards while Martin jammed all communications, leaving Turner's army blind and deaf. Isaac moved through the darkness like death itself. His military training merged with personal fury into something beyond human. The first security team never saw him coming. 4 professionals reduced to corpses in as many seconds. The second team lasted longer but died just as quietly. Perry's sniper rifle sang from his elevated position, each shot eliminating threats before they could endanger civilians in nearby buildings. This wasn't random violence. It was surgical precision applied with lethal intent. Inside the warehouse, Turner barricaded himself with his remaining lieutenants, screaming orders that no one could hear through Martin's electronic interference. The Detroit reinforcements were trapped in a building that had become their tomb, fighting enemies they couldn't see while their escape routes burned around them. Isaac found Gerard Blair cowering in a storage closet, his earlier bravado replaced by the whimpering of a man who'd never faced real violence. Please, Gerard begged, I've got money. Whatever they're paying you, I'll double it. This isn't about money, Isaac replied, his voice carrying the cold certainty of judgment. This is about respect. Gerard's scream echoed through the warehouse before being cut short. Meanwhile, Melody sat in her car outside her parents' house, paralyzed by the growing realization that she'd married a monster. Mike's frantic phone calls had painted a picture of war in the streets, enemies closing in from all sides. But as she watched news reports of explosions and gunfire across the city, she began to understand who the real enemy was. Her phone rang. Isaac's number. "Where's Danny?" His voice was different, colder, more focused than she'd ever heard. "He's safe." "Isaac, what's happening?" Mike says. Mike says a lot of things. Most of them are lies. Are you doing this?" Silence stretched between them, filled with the distant sound of sirens and explosions. "You had choices, Melody. You chose wrong. Danny needs his mother. Danny needs to be protected from the choices his mother made." The line went dead. Melody tried calling back, but Isaac's phone went straight to voicemail, a recording that would haunt her dreams. "This is Isaac Swift. If you're hearing this message, I'm either dead or dealing with people who threaten my family. Either way, the consequences are on you." Back at the warehouse, Turner made his final stand in a reinforced office, surrounded by the last of his loyal soldiers. Isaac breached the room like an avenging angel, moving through gunfire with supernatural grace. One by one, Turner's protectors fell until only the two men remained. "You don't understand," Turner pleaded, bleeding from multiple wounds. "This isn't just about money. There are people, powerful people, who will come for you. Let them come," Isaac replied, approaching with the patience of a predator. "I've been killing powerful people since before you learned to count dirty money. Your son will grow up without a father. My son will grow up knowing his father protected him from monsters." Turner's end came quickly, too quickly for the suffering he'd caused, but Isaac was practical about his vengeance. Death was the destination. The journey was irrelevant. As sirens wailed closer, Isaac's team executed their extraction plan. Edmund's final explosives erased evidence, while Martin's electronic warfare continued to blind law enforcement. Perry provided overwatch as they melted back into the city's shadows. By midnight, Turner's criminal empire was extinct. 12 buildings had burned, 43 criminals were dead, and Cleveland's underground had been reminded that some boundaries should never be crossed. Isaac stood on his apartment balcony one last time, watching the city burn. Tomorrow would bring investigations, questions, and a manhunt that would span continents. But tonight, justice had been served with military precision. His phone showed 37 missed calls from Melody and a single text message from an encrypted number. Extraction in 30 minutes. Roof. Marcus Chun had kept his word. Escape was possible, if Isaac was willing to disappear forever. The choice between freedom and fatherhood beckoned. Chapter 8. The Reckoning's Price. Isaac packed his life into 2 duffel bags. Military efficiency applied to civilian existence. Photographs of Danny, official documents that proved Isaac Swift had once existed, and weapons that would help him survive whatever came next. The apartment that had been his home would soon be a crime scene, analyzed by federal investigators who would find only shadows and questions. His secure phone rang. Russell Pearson. "Isaac, whatever you did tonight has half the FBI heading toward Cleveland. My contacts are saying this looks like foreign military action." "Good. Let them chase ghosts." The team's secure. Edmund and Perry are already airborne. Martin's wiping his electronic footprints. But Isaac, this was scorched earth. There's no coming back from this. Isaac stared at Danny's school photo one final time. "I know. Your extraction window closes in 15 minutes. Marcus Chin doesn't wait for anyone. I know that too." After ending the call, Isaac sat in his leather chair and opened his laptop. The Danny Swift College Fund contained $2.8 million, money accumulated through legitimate investments and less legitimate contracts. With a few keystrokes, he transferred everything to an account controlled by Danny's grandparents, along with detailed instructions for the boy's education and care. The note he left behind was simple: "For my son's future. He deserves better than the choices his parents made." Isaac's phone buzzed with news alerts. The warehouse fire was being called the worst gang violence in Cleveland's history. Federal agencies were taking over the investigation, treating it as potential terrorism. Melody Turner was being questioned about her husband's business activities, while Danny remained safely with his grandparents, protected by ignorance from the storm his father had unleashed. A knock at the door interrupted Isaac's final preparations. He approached with weapon drawn, but the voice that called out was unexpected. "Daddy? Are you in there?" Danny. Somehow, his 8-year-old son had found his way to this moment of reckoning. Isaac opened the door to find Danny standing in the hallway, tears streaming down his face. clutching a small suitcase. Grandpa brought me here. He said you might be leaving forever. Isaac knelt to Danny's level, his heart breaking with the weight of choices that couldn't be unmade. How did you get here, buddy? Grandpa's in the car. He said you were a good man who had to do bad things to protect people. He said I should decide if I wanted to say goodbye. Curtis Stewart, Melody's father, had been a Vietnam veteran who understood the weight of necessary violence. Somehow, he'd seen through the chaos to recognize what Isaac had been forced to become. Danny, listen to me very carefully. I love you more than anything in this world. Everything I did to keep you safe. From Uncle Mike? From Uncle Mike and people like him. Bad people who hurt families. Danny wiped his nose with his sleeve. Are you going away like the soldiers on TV? The ones who don't come home. Isaac felt his composure cracking. Maybe. Probably. Can I come with you? The innocence of the question destroyed Isaac's remaining emotional defenses. No, buddy. Where I'm going, kids can't follow. But someday, when you're grown up, maybe we'll find each other again. Promise. Isaac looked into his son's eyes, mirrors of his own, but filled with hope instead of rage. I promise I'll try. They hugged in the doorway while sirens wailed in the distance and helicopters circled overhead. Isaac memorized the moment, his son's small arms around his neck, the scent of childhood innocence, the weight of love that made all other sacrifices meaningful. I have to go now, Isaac whispered. I know. Danny stepped back, trying to be brave. Will you think about me? Every day. Will you write letters? When I can. Danny reached into his pocket and pulled out a small toy soldier, one Isaac had given him years ago. Take this, so you remember you're one of the good guys. Isaac accepted the toy, his vision blurring with unshed tears. I'll treasure it. As Danny walked back toward his grandfather's car, Isaac felt the full weight of his choices. He'd chosen vengeance over family, justice over love, consequences over forgiveness. The city was safer with Turner's criminal empire destroyed, but the cost was everything Isaac valued most. The rooftop extraction point beckoned, Marcus Chin's helicopter already visible against the storm clouds. Isaac could disappear into the shadow world, become someone else, start fresh in a place where Isaac Swift had never existed. But watching his son's small figure disappear into the night, Isaac wondered if survival was worth the price of his soul. The helicopter touched down as Isaac reached the roof, its rotors whipping rain and debris into a maelstrom that matched his emotional state. Marcus Chin sat in the pilot's seat, gesturing urgently for Isaac to board. Time to go, brother. The entire city's about to be locked down. Isaac climbed aboard, but as the helicopter lifted off, he took one final look at Cleveland, the city where he'd found love, lost it, and learned that some betrayals demanded blood payment. Below, emergency lights painted the night in reds and blues, while somewhere in the darkness, his son began a life shaped by the ghost of a father who'd chosen war over forgiveness. Chapter 9. The Long Shadow. 3 years later, Isaac Swift existed only in classified files and wanted posters. The man who disappeared from Cleveland had become someone else. New name, new face courtesy of military-grade surgeons, new purpose in the shadows between nations. Marcus Chin's network had use for soldiers who understood that justice sometimes required unofficially sanctioned violence. But Danny Swift was never far from his thoughts. Isaac, now calling himself Thomas Kane, sat in a cafe in Prague, reading American news on an encrypted tablet. The Turner investigation had ended with 12 federal indictments and a complete restructuring of Cleveland's law enforcement agencies. Melody had plea bargained down to accessory charges, serving 2 years in minimum security before relocating to her sister's place in Oregon. Danny, now 11, lived with his grandparents and attended a private school funded by the anonymous trust Isaac had established. According to carefully obtained reports, the boy was thriving, honor roll student, baseball team captain, showing none of the darkness that had consumed his parents' generation. Isaac's phone buzzed with an encrypted message. Package requires delivery. Prague to Baltimore. 48-hour window. The work never stopped. There was always another corrupt official to eliminate, another criminal network to dismantle, another mission that required someone willing to cross lines that didn't officially exist. Isaac had become efficient at it. Death delivered with surgical precision, justice served without courts or juries. But success in the shadow world came with its own costs. Sleep brought nightmares where Danny asked why his father had chosen vengeance over family. Quiet moments filled with the weight of isolation that came from being someone who could never go home. Isaac finished his coffee and checked his watch. The Baltimore mission would take him within 300 miles of Cleveland, close enough to see Danny from a distance, far enough to maintain the boy's safety. He'd promised himself he wouldn't. The life he'd chosen required complete separation from his past. But parental love was stronger than professional discipline, and Isaac found himself booking flights that would take him home. 2 days later, Isaac sat in a rental car outside Danny's school, watching his son emerge from baseball practice. The boy had grown tall and lean, his movements carrying the confident grace of youth unmarked by adult betrayals. Danny laughed with his teammates, shouldered his equipment bag, and walked toward his grandfather's waiting car without knowing his father watched from the shadows. For 30 minutes, Isaac memorized details. The way Danny wore his cap tilted slightly left, the gesture he made when explaining something enthusiastically, the smile that was purely his own creation. Then, as Danny's grandfather drove away, Isaac started his engine and prepared to return to his exile. His phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Dad. Danny's voice, older but unmistakable. Isaac's world stopped. Danny? How did you? Grandpa saw you. He gave me your phone number. He said you might be watching. Isaac looked toward Curtis Stewart's car, stopped at a traffic light 2 blocks away. The old veteran raised his hand in a subtle salute. Soldier to soldier, father to father. Are you okay, buddy? I'm good. Really good. On a roll again this semester. I'm proud of you. Are you okay? Grandpa says you're doing important work, but you can't tell anyone about it. Isaac stared at his reflection in the car window, seeing a stranger with his son's eyes. I'm doing what I have to do. When can you come home? The question that haunted Isaac's dreams, spoken with the innocent faith that problems had solutions and families could be repaired. I don't know, Danny. Maybe never. Because of the bad things you had to do? Because of the choices I made. Good and bad. Silence stretched between them, filled with years of separation and love that distance couldn't diminish. Dad, I forgive you for whatever you did. Grandpa explained some of it, about Uncle Mike and the people who wanted to hurt our family. I understand why you had to go away. Isaac felt tears he hadn't allowed himself to shed in 3 years. You don't understand, Danny. Not really. What I did, what I became, it's not something good people forgive. You're my dad. That makes you good people to me. As Curtis Stewart's car disappeared around a corner, Isaac sat alone in the gathering dusk, holding a phone connection to the only person who'd ever made him want to be better than his worst instincts. I love you, buddy. I love you too, Dad. And someday, when your important work is finished, maybe you can come home. Maybe. I'll be waiting. The line went dead, leaving Isaac alone with the weight of choices that couldn't be undone and love that refused to die. Somewhere in Oregon, Melody was building a new life free from the consequences of her decisions. Somewhere in Cleveland, Danny was growing into the man his father hoped he could become. And somewhere in the shadows between nations, Isaac Swift continued his work, dispensing justice to those who thought themselves untouchable, carrying the weight of vengeance that had saved his son but cost him everything else. The rental car pulled away from Danny's school as night fell over Cleveland. Isaac had one more job to complete, one more mission in the endless war against those who preyed on the innocent. But now he carried something new, his son's forgiveness, offered freely despite understanding its cost. It wouldn't bring him home. It wouldn't undo the choices that had made him a ghost. But it was enough to keep fighting for a world where Danny could grow up safe, even if Isaac could never be part of it. The boy's promise echoed in the darkness. I'll be waiting. Perhaps someday, when the shadows had claimed enough blood, Isaac Swift could stop running from the love that had made him capable of such beautiful, terrible things. But until that day, the hunt continued. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.